Alright, I am back with an Avowed video. This will be my video review of the game now that the embargo has lifted. I am not a great YouTuber who recorded all this ahead of time. I did my review for embargo, but video stuff I kind of wanted to do after the fact in my traditional no breaks, very casual, unprofessional style. The footage I'm showing here, I would not worry about spoilers. I purposefully did not do any story content. I went back to some older zones and sort of ran around exploring, which is one of the benefits of this game is, you know, I'm probably 3/4 of the way through this playthrough on Mage. I did a full playthrough on Warrior, and you can just, I'm just going to blank parts of the map and finding new things and finding legendary stuff I missed. So that is one of the appeals of the game. I don't really talk to anyone about story stuff. I don't really show story stuff, so I don't think there's anything to be considered a spoiler here, but yeah, so just a heads up on that. We are in the wake of reviews here. The game is sitting at something like an 80, 81. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I am often higher than the average in a lot of games, you know, for better or worse. I think some people will be interested to see that this is reviewing below Dragon Age: The Veilguard. We'll see what happens there, because it just sort of released in early access today, and people are still forming their opinions. As you can see, I liked it a lot. It certainly has some issues. I think some of them come with the territory of needing to be, you know, a smaller scale RPG, but I think this is a really good game, and this is something I was really not hyped about when it was shown off. I'm like, this looks kind of not great, when everyone else is like, oh, that looks cool. Eventually I did get my hands on it for an early preview, then I'm like, oh, this actually plays pretty well, and it was fun. And now that I've played the whole game, yeah, it's very fun. I think one of the core appeals of this game to people that I think a lot of critics who play games for a living might miss is the length. My first playthrough was 30-ish hours. That is trying to find all the side quests I could. It was not exploring every inch of the map or finding every collectible or finding every off-the-path ruin with a chest in it. But, you know, it was a substantive playthrough, and it was about 30 hours. This is a genre where often you can have 50, 60, 80, 100-hour plus, you know, several hundred hours if we're talking like an Elder Scrolls game or Baldur's, but I think the condensed length is going to make a good amount of people happy, because I think we live in an age of very, very long games that can be kind of exhausting to get through, especially when you do not play games for a living. If you're not a YouTuber or streamer or journalist, you know, it's going to take you forever to get through a lot of these games, whereas Avowed is a much more bite-sized experience. But if you want to do 3 playthroughs at the very least, making different decisions, doing a different build, you can do that. It is really easy to change your build essentially completely at any point in the game. It just costs a little gold. But if you want to like go through and see what opposite decisions do and stuff, that's good. And they do pretty significant things. I think another big pro of Avowed is its exploration. This is not a full open world, but there are a bunch of maps that are kind of little self-contained open worlds, and they're not small. I mean, they're not like enormous, but there is plenty to find because they are densely populated, and there is not a lot of kind of there's not like a ton of empty space. Like, you'll see me walking around for a little while here to find stuff, but you can find stuff pretty quickly. Another note about this footage, I am in older zones, so combat is pretty easy. I'm in like the second zone, then I go to the first zone. So this is not representative of the difficulty of the game, where I'm taking pretty much no damage and destroying everything pretty easily. It's definitely not like that, especially Mage starts off really rough. So it's definitely harder than this. There are higher difficulties you can play, so don't judge the difficulty just based on this. I'm only doing this to avoid spoilers. I think exploration is great. Every time you see something that looks kind of interesting or cool, you can just go there and explore it. Sometimes it'll lead to a side quest. Sometimes it's just, as I kind of discover here, you know, I was just going to the areas of the map that I hadn't been to yet, and, you know, finding a bunch of chests, finding materials, finding consumables, finding stuff to sell at the market. I think over the course of this video, I like discovered at least 2 legendary, a legendary piece of armor, a legendary grimoire, and a piece of a totem that I'm missing that's a collectible. And, you know, that was just me randomly wandering around zones I'd kind of already explored. So there's a lot of this. There's very few areas where you go there and you're like, oh, this is locked until you pick up some future quest. Like, nothing is really gated like that. If anything's gated, it's mostly about enemy difficulty. Difficulty in this game, I didn't really talk about it much in the review, but it's interesting. And, like, you do have levels, but it's a lot about your gear. You want to sync upgrades into your gear, and as you do so, enemies will go from like triple skulls to double skulls to single skulls to nothing in terms of how difficulty sort of feels. And as you progress through the maps, you may run into enemies that just destroy you, and then, you know, you'll come back later, upgrade your gear, and do whatever. In terms of combat, I thought this was a big pro for the game. There are some issues with it, but I think they did it really well, and certainly better than I originally thought it looked in early previews. As I said, my main build was a warrior. You know, you can do sword and shield. You can do, you know, double melee. I did two-handed maul and or axe and or I think those are the two. And one was focused on stun. One was focused on bleed. Damage over time effects are not great in this. I think maybe those should be patched a little. I liked warrior in the sense that, you know, doing melee combat, like kind of tanking stuff, running around, you know, getting a lot of speed, a lot of, you know, tankiness, and being able to just sort of bulldoze through things was pretty fun. I think the problem with melee is that everything sort of comes down to stun, where even if you're not really doing a stun build, once you max someone's stun, you do like a finisher on them, and it gets a little repetitive doing essentially the exact same finisher to like 80% of enemies. But there's also, like, you know, abilities you pick up along the way, and you make things a little more spicier. You are using your companions in combat a lot. There's 3 in total. There's like, you know, just a dude with a shotgun who's sort of a tank who leaps on people. There is an archer dude who traps people and debuffs people. There's a healer. One thing I don't like is that the healer feels essentially mandatory, because otherwise healing is almost entirely done by a consumable. Whether that's during a fight where you want to heal, or after a fight where you have no life, you can just get a free heal from her as opposed to chugging a bunch of consumables. And I essentially, once I got her, you don't get her until a little while into the game. Fights became a lot easier, and it was less frustrating to get more health back, because otherwise you had to keep fast traveling to camp to get your health back. Maybe there's a way to do a healing build, but I even doing mage, I didn't really find one, so that one's kind of odd. In terms of mage was a lot of fun. I think mage is more fun than melee, which is true in a lot of games, and I agree with some of the people saying that this is one of the better mage games in this genre, you know, for like an action game that you can play. Spells are really cool. I haven't even used all the spells, but what you see in this build is it's a storm grimoire that I bought for some cash and upgraded. Your grimoire has a set of spells, but you can also put spells on your hotbar. The grimoire spells will be more powerful, and then you also have a wand that serves as sort of like a gun or a bow. It's just kind of a ranged attack. It can get some special effects. The one I have builds up frost, and the grimoire, this one I have like a chain lightning. I have 2 chain lightning spells, different power levels, different mana uses. I have a blizzard, which is probably the best move I have, and then I have this storm, which is an even bigger area, but I find it a little less consistent than the blizzard, but it looks really cool. And there's like entropy moves and void moves, and there are defensive moves, not like healing from what I found in any great sense, but like you can put fire and frost rings around you, which, you know, destroy melee enemies that are trying to kill you and give you a lot of damage reduction. I had a like pure AoE defensive build for a while, which was fun, but I like this one with all the storm moves better. And then different grimoires you find will have like different sets of moves. And the class I did not do was like the ranger class. That's mostly about, you know, bows, and then there's guns in this, which is certainly something you don't see in Elder Scrolls. There's like rifles, and you can do double pistols. I mean, you can really do anything. Like, you can mix and match. You can have a sword and a gun. You can have a wand and a shield. Like, I don't know if that's efficient per se, but you can sink some points into other trees besides like, oh, I'm just going to go pure mage or pure warrior. I haven't done that yet, but I'm sure people can come up with some creative stuff. In terms of the story, without getting into spoilers, the basic, premise of this is you are being sent to this island by your emperor. You are an envoy. You will be called envoy for essentially the entire game. You have weird mushroom shit on your face, which kind of looks weird in the character creator. You can turn it off visually if you want, but that means you are a godlike. Godlikes are pretty rare, powerful people that have been touched by a god. Your god is a mystery. Most people know their gods. You don't know your god. Part of the mystery is finding out who your god is. Another part is finding what this dream scourge is on the island, which corrupts people and animals and is like taking over the landscape and is going to consume it unless you help stop it. And then there's, different subplots along the way, but I was compelled by the main storyline, I think, the most. Those mysteries were genuinely interesting to me in a way that, I don't always find in this genre, killing the big dragon and stuff. I thought this was more creative in the way it unfolded. The side stories are not as interesting. I think there were some good companion ones. Some of the side ones are not like the most compelling. I think the best part of the quests is the decision stuff, where yes, if you have stats in a really high area, you can like really change something. You can talk a boss out of fighting you. You can, convince someone to give you something very valuable, whether if you intimidate them. But I like the little things, without getting into specifics. Like you can spare someone, and later if you do that, they will help you smuggle someone somewhere. If you kill them, later on, this was like hours and hours later, probably like 10 hours later, I woke up and there was a guy hanging outside my camp who was like a former ally of mine with like a note pinned to him that said like, "This is for so-and-so." I think I laughed because one of the first side quests you get, I won't say what it is, but it has a payoff literally in like the grand finale of the game, where like when I saw what was happening, I actually laughed. So there's a lot of stuff like that, both for major and minor plot points. I'm sure I even missed a lot of this. I've done a playthrough with mostly opposite decisions, but I think this is something that will satisfy a lot of people who are hoping for more meaningful choices. Like, no, this is not Baldur's Gate. There are not a million permutations of like how things can go. It is certainly more stripped down than that. In terms of being stripped down, I think there's positives and negatives there. I do not miss a lot of the things they eliminated from this genre. Sprinting does not take stamina, which, God, I hate sprinting stamina in games. Like, I get it, but like it's so annoying. And so I do not miss that. In terms of encumbrance, I get encumbered once during this video, but the only things that weigh anything are chest armor and weapons. All of your food, all of your ammo, even like gloves and boots do not weigh anything. So there's a lot more leeway in terms of what you pick up. You can also either instantly, shard things for materials, or you don't have to drop stuff, or you can send stuff to your vault or your storage, like just from your person. Like you don't have to travel to a camp and deposit it. So it really makes it easy to not be encumbered and, have to decide like, oh, I got to throw this on the ground and go to the camp, and then I got to go back and pick it up again. Like there's nothing like that. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. In terms of the stuff they're missing, the upgrade path for stuff is like not my favorite. It's like a little too basic, where you're upgrading stuff through all these like tiers as you go, and sometimes you'll spend a lot of time upgrading something, and then you just find something better, and you're like, well, what did I sink all those materials for? But like by the time you get there, it doesn't really matter, because it's fine to leave that stuff behind. One of the issues is like there is a lot of looting, and you can find some really cool stuff and uniques, but a lot of the time you're just sort of getting the same like 6 or 7 materials. Like you'll get a little gold, you might get a jewel, and then you get 5 or 6 materials that work toward upgrading you to the next thing, which is fine. It's just pretty repetitive when that is a big majority of the chests. There's certainly some interesting things and valuable things in chests, but it does get a little much when everything is just serving this pretty simplistic system. Unique items, I upgrade one in this video. You can choose a path where it's like 1 increased skill in this way, 1 increased skill in that way, but it's not exactly, I wouldn't call this build crafting from a gear perspective. The build crafting is more in the skill points you choose. I didn't bring it up here in the menu or anything, but what kind of build do you want? Do you want max stun? Do you want max bleed? Do you want heavy focus on ice or electric? And like, this is not exactly new, but there is some build crafting in that regard, and again, you can mix and match. And the stuff I came up with, I found very fun in combat for the most part. That is the majority, I think, of what I want to talk about without getting into actual spoilers here. I'm very curious how this will be received. Everyone really likes Obsidian. Fallout New Vegas is sort of this treasured, I guess, cult classic, despite it reviewing lower than other Fallout games. Famously, Obsidian did not get a bonus because it scored an 84 instead of an 85, which is like the shittiest use of Metacritic. Hopefully they're not doing that this time. I like this a lot more than the Outer Worlds, like a lot more. So take that for what it's worth. And, I'm still going to play it. I'm probably going to do another playthrough. So, like, I might get my playtime here up to 90 hours if I do, like, a Ranger or something. So, I don't know. People like and don't like stuff. I like this game more than the average, maybe. But I don't think this is going to be, like, some big controversial Dragon Age the Veilguard thing or, like, some big flop. What even is a Microsoft flop at this point with everything launching on Game Pass? Like, we'll never know. So, we'll see how this does. It's early access right now. I would not pay for early access. I do think it's worth, was it $70? I think it's worth $70, personally, because you can, it's 30 hours, but you can double or triple that if you do multiple playthroughs. So, I'm not worried about that aspect of it. So if you're playing early, let me know what you think. If you circle back around to this, let me know later, and I will be writing a few articles, some tips articles. I don't know if I should write my tips article, like, tomorrow or when the game launches wide. Probably when the game launches wide. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.